Hey everybody, welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. My name is DJ Wooldridge, and with me today to discuss the boys is the wonderful Yael Tygiel. Yael!
Hello.
Say hi to everybody.
Hi.
So for the people that didn't see you drop by on Super TV or Stargirl Reviews, who are you? Where can people find you? What are you working on?
I'm Yael Tygiel. Also, how did you not see me on Stargirl? And what's wrong with you? Also, you can find me all over the internet at Yael Tygiel, especially on my Twitch channel, which is so fun if you like to tell people how to play video games, because I don't know how to play video games. And that's what I do, is sit there and wait till someone explains how it works.
So what game are you playing right now?
Oh, right now I'm playing a dating simulator called Blush Blush.
Ooh.
And Super Nintendo.
Classic. Classic.
Yes.
Love it. So today we are talking about The Boys Season 2, Episode 6, The Bloody Doors Off. Good title for this episode. The Sage Grove Center, Reserved, is dedicated to caring for those struggling with mental illness. Our compassionate doctors and counselors provide personalized services to help patients live their best lives. If you or a loved one need help, call the Sage Grove Center today at 1-800-122-8585, a proud subsidiary of Global Wellness Services Reserved, which is a proud subsidiary of Vought International Reserved. This episode was directed by Sarah Boyd and written by Anselm Richardson. So, the kids at home, you might want to try that number. There's probably a goofy thing. I didn't have a chance before we recorded this to do it, but it's I'm sure that was no accident that they put a phone number in the description. So we're gonna break this episode down, plot by plot, story by story, starting with kind of the one that took up the least real estate: Maeve, A-Train, and the Deep. So we begin this episode, we ended last episode with Maeve and the Deep working together. Maeve's reaching out to the Deep to kind of help her box in Homelander, which I'm sure will work great. He is a person that deals well with people making demands of him. And he, using his fish buddies, finds a camera from the plane that we saw last season that they let Homelander let crash with everybody inside. That was really bad for those that didn't see the previous season. And then her girlfriend, Elena, finds it, and we're kind of left on an ambiguous note about how she feels about it and how it affects her opinions of Maeve. What do you think about Maeve's plan? Because I got to imagine it's not going to work out the way she thinks it is.
Right. Her plan is, I'm going to show it to him and blackmail him. Or if he doesn't accept blackmail, I'm going to put it out there and ruin my own life. And that's her plan.
Yes.
And I'm sure her girlfriend does not like this plan. This plan doesn't end well for the girlfriend any direction it goes.
No, it does not. I wonder, that'd be interesting if maybe she becomes a more active participant in the blackmail plan. We have seen blackmail work with, Starlight has effectively used blackmail. Well, she effectively used blackmail on A-Train. It appears to have been less effective on Stormfront, because she was creepily like, oh, I got plans for you, which is like, oh, I don't know what that means. Meanwhile, of course, A-Train is out of the 7 and he's not handling it great. And I guess the Deep has been picking up techniques from the Church of the Collective, because he's able to pick up on that and kind of ropes A-Train into a lunch with Alistair, who is like the head of the church, who we saw in the commercial last week, but now we meet in person here. What do you think the church, obviously at this point, they're collecting former members of the 7 with the promise that they will get them back into the 7. What do you think their overall scheme is? Do you think it's like just normal shady religious cult stuff, or is it kind of more superhero-y, nefarious?
That's a really great question, because I definitely see it and I'm like, oh, clearly they're just following the cult handbook. You recruit and then train that person to recruit, and pyramid scheme style.
Yes.
Like that's what they're doing. But there has to be some sort of bigger plan, especially they're collecting soup. So are they building their own super team? I'm very excited to see where that goes. I also I'm not a fan of the Deep storyline, and I don't care for this redemption or whatever bull we're trying to put together. But I think that I'm interested to see what the church is doing. That's interesting. Yeah. And now that A-Train's there, great. We can get rid of the Deep and deal with it with A-Train.
It's been interesting watching what they're doing with the Deep and his continued presence on the show. And my read on it is that he is there to basically be a perpetual punching bag. Like he's a living, talking punchline on the show. Like every time they want to like get a good dig on somebody, or essentially the writer equivalent of throwing a character down the stairs, like Deep is there for that. That's what he exists for.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah, because they get a lot of, like the commercial from last week, the situation with the whale in the premiere episode. Like they get a lot of good gags out of the Deep's existence, and that's probably the only reason why he's still around. Moving on to, we talked a little bit about Starlight's penchant for blackmail, and her kind of fear of what Stormfront has planned for her, which leads her to get her tracking chip removed. Which I don't know you got to remove, but like you got to do something with it so they don't know that you got to remove. But anyway, I guess we'll find that out in a future week. So she gets roped into a mission with the boys because she tells them about Sage Grove. And Butcher, as kind of collateral, brings her along. And we'll dive more into Sage Grove later, but all the patients escape. And one of them does a really cool telekinetic blast thing, or EMP thing, because it seems to knock out the power in the area. And Huey gets hurt. And so what we ends up happening is this is an opportunity for Starlight and Butcher to bond. What did you think about what was going on there and that dynamic?
Honestly, when she first walked in and the way he treats her, like I know how much he hates soups, but the fact that he has accepted Kimiko makes me confused as to why he can't accept that some aren't terrible.
Yeah.
So the idea that we had to do all of this for him to be like, fine, I'll be as rude to you as I am to the others and no more. Like that felt unnecessary to me.
Yeah, and it's interesting. That I like the fact that Starlight is being more incorporated into the stories, because I really enjoy this show, but I kind of don't. A dynamic that I care about least is the actual team dynamic of the boys. I don't dislike any of the individual characters, but it's not like I'm excited for this zany crew to go on an adventure. You know what I mean? Like I like MM, and I think Butcher's interesting. But I think the show's kind of realizing that like Starlight is an interesting person to put in this dynamic, because she kind of fits, but kind of doesn't. On the surface, she shouldn't fit at all, but she actually kind of does fit. Yeah.
She also points out something that a lot of people have pointed out, including a co-host of mine, that Butcher and Homelander are the same. Mm-hmm. They are the same character. Except that Butcher thinks he's doing the right thing and Homelander's just a sociopath. Mm-hmm. Like she just says it to his face, which I loved.
Yeah. And she ends up getting a little bit of her. I've been kind of hard on this show because I feel like for as much of its talk about like being edgy and stuff, it tends to like pull its punches. It does not this episode. They go to, because Huey is mortally wounded, they go to get a car. And in the process of trying to get the car, this person is armed and he pulls a gun, and Starlight goes to, I think the intent is to knock him out, but classic. People in shows, you hit your head the right way, you're done for. It's over. How do you think that'll affect Starlight moving forward?
I think Butcher's definitely going to hold it over her. Like, I think she's going to deal with she killed somebody.
Yeah.
And he's going to be like, you killed somebody.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to happen going forward. Cause she does mean well and want to do the right thing, but only the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because on the one hand, the show doesn't let her off the hook. The guy dies. On the other hand, he did pull a gun. Like they do a little bit. It was a similar issue I had with, they revealed earlier in the season that Kamiko's brother was the super terrorist they were hunting down. And so it's a really challenging, like, oh, what are they going to do? Because Kamiko cares about him. And then the brother ends up being super radicalized, so Kamiko is the one that takes him down. It's like, well, you kind of diffuse the situation. Like nobody had to like work through anything. They end up taking Huey to the hospital, and Butcher and Starlight kind of bond over Huey being basically kind of lame, and they both kind of end on the same note of like, oh, he's too good for us. And it's interesting, they're really emphasizing Huey as like the moral core of this universe.
Remind me, he's the one who blew up the guy last season?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Moral
yeah,
compass.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, for this show, it's I think it's just a way to kind of justify Huey's existence on the show because he doesn't have powers and he's not good at anything. You know what I mean? He doesn't have like secret spy skills or anything.
Isn't he supposed to be like the audience entrance, our POV, the human who wants to do the right thing? I feel like Starlight has also been kind of that she like is the audience view of the seven.
Yeah.
And so maybe we only need one, and I vote her.
Or at least like I also think Huey was supposed to be like hacker guy. I think in the comics he's more hacker guy, but like MM does a lot of hacking this episode, so I don't know if we need him. But speaking of like characters' functions on the show, kind of going more into the bulk of the episode, which takes place at Sage Grove, we also deal with flashbacks with Frenchie, which I think is good because if you asked me who my favorite member of the boys is, Frenchie is not that person. Not that I have anything against the actor or the character. He doesn't interest me. Like he likes Kamiko, but it makes sense. I get that. Like, who wouldn't? So we finding out that not only a little bit of how he got roped into being a member of the boys, but also kind of finding out that he was essentially what would have been like a C-list supervillain. Like he would have been one of the Flash rogues if he was like DC Comics, or like a Spider-Man villain if he was in Marvel Comics. Not necessarily somebody with a costume and a gimmick, but he's able to work around the soups. Made me more invested in him.
Yeah, I really liked getting to know how it all came to be, because that's something we've been asking, for a while. Like, how did these guys know each other?
Yeah.
So I really love seeing that. I will say he's the most Israeli Frenchman I've ever seen. And this episode, I felt like you see more of his Israeli side.
So when they bust into Sage Grove, based off Starlight's tip, it's Frenchie, Kamiko, and MM that go in there, and Stormfront shows up, which immediately throws a spanner in the works, and they realize that Shawn Ashmore is Lamplighter. He is there, and we find out more about the history between these characters. In the comics, it is similar and to the show. He killed the children of Mallory, who in the comics is a man. But as part of like a barter agreement between the seven and the boys, Lamplighter is killed. And then it gets more, he's like resurrected, but he's like not his full self. And he's like left in a basement to shit all over himself. Like it's weird. Anyway, we're not doing any of that. He's just an orderly at this place. And what we find out is they are trying to stabilize the V to make an army of soups. And I guess if they mouth off too much, he burns them up.
Yeah, I really, really loved all of this. Everything about Lamplighter, the whole explanation, the whole idea that he didn't know that they were kids. His like, I just like to watch people burn because I'm putting on a facade because I feel terrible about what I did. I loved that because it does give us a humanity to this superhero, which I feel like they're, every time we meet a new villain, we're like, oh, they're just pieces of garbage.
Yeah.
So I liked that a lot. I liked all of it. And I think the idea that he's there, because I also was like, was he a nurse? Like, what is he doing? The idea that he's literally there to burn the evidence, that feels fitting. And then getting to see him in the flashback in full costume and everyone laughing at him was just so good. It was so good.
There was one picture, like one angle they hit, like I think that's just the Arrow costume from Arrow that they put him in with a mask. And it was a little bit like, obviously, fan of Shawn Ashmore. I think he's a terrific actor, but I was like, why do you get him for Lamplighter of all people? And then when they did the premiere in the flashback, I'm like, oh yeah, he's a celebrity. Yeah, okay, this makes sense. Like, because really the soups have abilities, but they are more celebrities than they are crime fighters. Which I also think is the one advantage. I always love when the boys are put in a position where they have to deal with a soup because they are so inherently outmatched. But the one advantage they do have is that the soups really have never faced any legitimate challenge. There's no villains. They are the villains. Like there's nobody other than these characters like standing up to them at all. So they're not exactly in the position to be prepared for any real fight, you know?
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
That's such a good point.
Except maybe Black Noir. Black Noir other than Homelander, he scares me the most. And interests me the most. I say that every episode. I like Black Noir. Anyway.
It's because we don't know enough about him that he scares us the most. And that he interests us the most.
He doesn't talk.
He does seem like a ninja.
Exactly. He doesn't seem like a ninja, although he did trip every trap in the last episode. But anyway, Frenchie tries to take Lamplighter out, which leads to a very brief confrontation, which inadvertently releases Cindy, who is terrifying. The question I have about the soups is I don't know why some of them appear to be bulletproof and others don't. Because Starlight
different powers.
Yeah, but like Starlight's abilities don't appear to have any. She just makes things glow. So I don't know why they had to get a special saw to cut out her chip.
Well, so she draws her power from what we learned is she draws her power from power around her. So she was in an area with electricity and could use that to strengthen herself. Boom.
I like it. I like that explanation. I don't know why Cindy appears to be telekinetic, but also appears to be bulletproof, which again, Cindy's terrifying. She makes a guard blow up, just explodes them, and then rips all the doors off of the other soups that they're trying to manufacture, which I am a sucker for this plot line where like typically in like Marvel or DC, it's like your hero is in the prison with all the other villains they've captured and they've all escaped. Like this is that formula. I love it. I'm a big fan of it. So they have to work with Lamplighter to try and escape, which it's a good showcase for kind of like, you know, the headliners on the show are like Butcher and Homelander. So this is a good showcase for MM, who's I think has been having a stellar season. Like this has just been a really good season for MM, like just solidifying that like, yeah, he's the best of the boys. But also Frenchie and Kimiko, who steps on that acid guy and he vomits all over himself and it's gross.
It was amazing because I always, anytime someone like spits acid or I guess vomits acid, I'm always like, how are they not burned everywhere? Like, how do they keep themselves safe? And I was like, oh, yeah, he doesn't.
Yeah, he doesn't. It has to be a way. Apparently, insides are okay. Outsides are not prepared to deal with that.
Right. I just have to. There was like a real missed opportunity in the fact that it's Shawn Ashmore playing Pyro. Like there was a missed opportunity that it wasn't addressed, especially when he's sitting in the I want to say dispensary, the pharmacy with the lighter. I was like, we're not gonna address this. This is huge.
I wonder if the conversation is like, what if we got Pyro from the X-Men movies? Like, which actor does that again? Let's get Iceman from the X-Men movies. We at least know who that guy is. So I like the idea of them working together and again, like just the different interactions they have with the soups. And this is where, like you were talking about earlier, we find out that he was trying to kill Mallory, and inadvertently killed the kids. In a weird way, kind of blames Frenchie for not stopping him. Who, by the way, we learned Frenchie's name is Surge. And so he was not there to stop Lamplighter because he was helping his buddy who was ODing, who we find out just ended up ODing and dying a few months down the road, which is believable. Yeah. What did you think about this, Lamplighter's backstory and how it relates to Frenchie and kind of the lesson he learns about like not trying to save himself through saving Kimiko?
I think Frenchie's got a lot of issues. I really like that we get this explanation, and that he realizes that it's not his job. And I do love their relationship when he's not trying to kiss her. And so I'm excited to see where it goes, but I think that I wish she could just smack him some more. Yeah.
And I think Karen Fukuhara who plays Kimiko, does a good job emoting with her face. She has a very expressive face. But it's tough with mute characters to have them have like a personality within the group. It was actually a problem I had with Michael Bay's Transformers movies, one of a few. But like with Bumblebee, since he couldn't talk, it was almost like he was just a prop in the movie. Like, what's his personality? We don't know, because Michael Bay is not the best at people being expressive outside of speaking, or people having personalities. But anyway, but I think it was a good opportunity to spend some time with her, because we haven't really, it's hard for the show to get into her headspace because she doesn't speak. The episode ends with Lamplighter actually covers for the boys when Stormfront shows back up, and they take him into captivity and basically offer him up to Mallory. And Frenchie makes an argument for his life, where it's like, if you kill him, he'll suffer more if you don't kill him, which that felt like really comic booky. It's like, no, you could probably take him out. Like, it's probably for the best. He murdered children. I don't know if we need to keep him around.
I agree, but I was like, what a waste of bringing in Shawn Ashmore just to kill him in one episode.
Yes. If you were going to do that, it'd be a better bit if, like, within 5 minutes he got blown up and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be, because in the flashbacks, he was supposed to be their original mole, which doesn't bode well for Starlight, considering how all that went down. How do you think they're going to use him now? Like, he's kind of in their pocket again. What do you think maybe the plan is going to be with Lamplighter?
I think at least at this point, he has more information to share. Like, he can now tell us what the current plan is and what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad that they have him for that. But I don't foresee him, like, he's not connected with anybody. He can't tell them. He can't, like, go and get more information. He's not in the Seven.
Yeah.
He works at the place. Maybe
he can join the church at the Collective. That seems to be their whole, they're collecting soups to try and get them back into the Seven. And I think the Seven's numbers are a little lax right now. Anyway, so speaking of the Seven, Homelander and Stormfront are full on in a relationship. They're giggling in interviews and they're smashing robbers' heads as they make out. Homelander wants Stormfront to come back to his trailer, and she's like, just hold on a minute. And he spirals hard. We don't know how long she's gone, but it couldn't have been long enough to warrant any of that.
I have a friend who decided that a guy ghosted her because she didn't get a text back in 26 hours. Mm-hmm. And so watching this, I was like, oh God, he's turned into her. Mm-hmm. Like, what is this? This is insanity.
Like, even worse, because it was probably like 2 hours.
15 minutes?
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, it couldn't have been that long. And he burns down. She asked him what he did to his trailer, but it looks like he demolished like a good portion of the set too. It's hard to say because the set's already like,
right,
like a battlefield, but it looks like Ashley's in an ambulance and like it's not great. And it's the first time we've seen Stormfront seem, maybe afraid isn't the right word, but like not as confident as we normally see her. Stormfront comes back to her place. Homelander's there being a creep. And she says she's going to tell him the full truth. So we finally get the full reveal of Stormfront's backstory, which we could probably start piecing together from the information we have. We learned in the premiere that Vought was a Nazi scientist. What we find out here is that she was his bride. She was the first soup. And she is wholly invested in his vision, which she says has culminated into Homelander. Like, he was what they've been trying to build this whole time, which feels like very trenchant commentary on our current political moment.
Before we get into that, I just want to get your opinion. I want to nitpick on a tiny thing.
Go for it.
The whole Sage Grove argument was that this is what happens when they give the compound V to adults.
Yes.
And that they then have to see how it works.
Yes.
If she was the first person to receive it and it worked, and then they realize that it works on children, that doesn't make sense to me, right? Like, the whole point is they give it to children and it works in children, and now they're figuring out how to do it with adults. But she was the first one and she was an adult.
Well, you want the creepy answer?
Yes. Child bride?
No, that he experimented on her when she was a kid, because I think the timeline, the way she phrases it, is she was the first, then she fell in love with him, then they got married. So so perhaps, and just a quick, jumping back real quick back to Sage Grove, it is worth mentioning that MM got wrapped up in a penis tentacle like that. We should at least we can't end the review without mentioning that it was uncircumcised. I don't know if anybody, it was uncircumcised. Just throwing that out there.
I appreciate that you noted that because I also was like, how odd.
Yeah, well, it was one of those, I think because of anime, you're kind of conditioned to think tentacle equals penis. But then as it was going on, I'm like, oh, and then I remembered the Easter egg we got earlier. I'm like, I know where this is going. Anyway, we couldn't end a review without mentioning it. Back to Stormfront, who was probably Vought's child bride. Yes. And so Homelander is what they've been trying to build towards. And she says she truly loves him. But it's within that context that he's kind of like, he is the Ubermensch, right? And so it's this kind of weird, I thought there was rumors that like, oh, big Stormfront reveal this episode. I thought it was going to be that she was his mom. And it's not literally that, but it is kind of figuratively that. And we were talking about a little bit about this before on air, that Homelander has a type. The boy just needed a mom, really, if we get down to it. Becca's argument that Ryan needs a mom is sound.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think about Stormfront and Homelander's relationship, and kind of where do you think after the reveal he kisses her, and of course he does because she appeals to his ego. We learned with his interaction with Doppelganger that he has deep-seated self-loathing. And so anytime you appeal to his insecurities or his ego, you're as good as you can be.
I think their relationship, as special as it is, I think it makes sense. I think it totally makes sense for both of them, right? Yeah. He is the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, all-American nationalist embodiment, and she is racist, and I think that it makes sense. This is the master race she's been building since she was built, and I think that totally works, and he will do anyone who strokes his ego.
Yes.
And the fact that he could do her aggressively and she won't die also appeals to him. I think the relationship makes complete sense.
Do you think he'll ask for her breast milk?
Oh, yes. I think he would be like, can I get you pregnant? We'll disregard the baby. I would like the breast milk.
I would like the breast milk. What a weirdo. Yeah, so that's where we end the episode. Where do we think? So Stormfront is building an army of supes, which is scary. She's already built an army of followers, and she even calls them such an army. Before her endgame, what do you think? Do you think Vought knows about Sage Grove? And do you think, and how does that fit into their, because they even, MM even asks, how does this diminishes your bottom line? How does this help Vought? How do you think Sage Grove and Stormfront's plans fit into Vaught's goals?
I think it's all connected. I think it kind of reminds me of Homelander's plan, which ended up with making a supe terrorist so that he had someone to fight so that they could get the military contract. I think this continues into that, is they're going to figure out how to use these people and these players. They needed to first figure out how it works, right? Because as they said, they're a pharmaceutical company. Yeah. So they need to figure out how it works so that they can then leverage it best for themselves. I think that at least Edgar is aware of what's it called? Sage Grove.
Yeah. We know what he is. We know he is because Starlight said it was emails between him and Stormfront. Right. Yeah. So he is on board. Weird. He's
on board. The big question is how a person of color is the head of a Nazi organization.
We had some people in the comments asking a similar question, and I think you don't have to go very far to see. You just look at the GOP. You know what I mean? You've got tokenism in there as a way to kind of cover. I think the bigger question I have is, how is Mr. Edgar okay with it? You know what I mean? Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Or is it just the paycheck for him, or does he buy into the idea of a master race less on the terms of race, but more on the terms it's the paycheck? I don't even know why I'm speculating. It's got to be the paycheck.
I mean, I think the question that I really have is, how is he not? He's at the top.
Yeah.
Make it what you want, sir.
Yeah.
The world is at your fingertips.
Unless maybe there's somebody above him.
That's also possible.
Yeah, like maybe, Stormfront's the first suit. Maybe she is more powerful than she lets on. There is conceivably a situation where maybe Stormfront's playing Homelander, and Homelander has to like work with the boys or something to try and take her down. I feel like that's a stretch. But
I also don't see Butcher allowing that ever.
No. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I believe this was episode 6. We only have 2 episodes left this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think there's going to be some resolution soon. We're going to have to get some kind of figure out how the Church of Collective fits into the overall scheme of things, and see how far Stormfront. Because even though she said she's going to tell him the truth, I don't know that she's revealed the scope of her plans. Right?
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I have to see. So any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean, we covered the tentacle dick, so we're good.
It was important. And also, Cindy is even though Stormfront knocked her out, she's on the loose, hitching rides. And that's, again, Cindy's terrifying. Her abilities are terrifying. So we'll have to see where that ends up too. A lot of loose threads at this point, and it definitely feels like they're playing the long game. Like they know they're setting up for season 3, because they can't resolve all this stuff in 2 episodes. So we'll see. Yael, remind the kids at home where they can find you and what you're up to.
Yes, you can find me on Saturdays on Streaming Wars on that hashtag show, on Sundays on Super Lady Hero Hour on Fanversation, and Mondays and Wednesdays not really playing video games well on Twitch at Yael Tygiel. That's everywhere at Yael Tygiel.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining me to talk about the boys. Everybody, let me know in the comments what you think about this episode, what you think Stormfront's end game is, or what Vought's end game is, and what you think about Tentacle Dick. Just straight thoughts. Be nice to each other, but I'm curious what people's thoughts are. Thank you all for joining us. Like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. You can find me at DJ Talks Trash. You can follow this show everywhere that matters at Only Stupid Answers, but you're going to want to yank the vowels out of stupid on Twitter. Stay tuned for more of the boys reviews, more reviews of Lovecraft Country, and new podcast episodes every Monday. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.